Shirt show. All right, let's go.
Shirt show! Talking shirt! Shirt show! Talking shirt! Shirt show! Talking shirt! Shirt show! Shirt, man! All right, episode 34 of Shirt Show. We're talking with Aaron from Monarch Color in North Carolina. Let's go! Shirt show!
Hey, I want to thank our sponsors, the F Guy, the one and only Frank, GSF.
Frank.
I mean, you know, if you want a screen stretched to perfection,
I don't know if he's going to like that. Stretched to perfection.
why would he? Okay, if you want a screen that's stretched all right, call Frank.
This I
mean, it's okay. You know, it'll print a shirt. So if that's what you want, give Frank a call.
If you want a screen stretched to 15 newtons, don't call Frank.
Yeah, don't call him. And also our other fantastic sponsor who we know and love, Easy Way. I mean, look, if you want a chemical that'll clean a screen, just okay.
It's the easiest way.
No, if you want a chemical that'll reclaim a screen to perfection, call Easy Way.
Eat all the skin off your hands. Call Easy Way.
Dylan, don't ruin this for us. No. So Chad.
I didn't know.
Here, we'll do this one more time. So if you want to hold on, I messed that one up. All right. Our other sponsor, Easy Way, who we know and love also. I mean, if you want what do you want? Dylan, take it away.
Easy Way. It's the easiest way.
Cheers. That's
Done.
shitty. That's shitty. That's we can do it.
Okay. Get it together.
All right. Now, thanks to our other sponsor, Easy Way. I mean, if you want to reclaim a screen to perfection, who are you going to call?
Easy Way.
Yeah, you were late, but it still works. All right, we got it. Let's do this podcast.
What's going on, man?
Not much. Just, enjoying the Sunday.
Yeah. Did you relax all weekend?
Yeah, it's been fairly relaxing. If you call relaxing climbing up trees and, over trimming trees to your wife's dismay. Yeah, that was me.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Are you one of those guys that climbs a tree with a chainsaw and then cuts limbs and they fall and hit your house?
Luckily, not yet. Not yet.
That's seriously one of the most dangerous jobs in the world.
It sounds like a challenge, though. So
I love the fail videos of the dudes that think they're like backyard warriors and they get on a ladder on a tree and then cut a branch and the branch comes down and takes the ladder out from underneath them.
Oh, there's some definitely good epic fail videos of, tree trimming.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple things.
We've got a few trees.
I think there's a couple things left to the professionals when it comes to your house, and that is tree trimming. And if your garage door breaks, call somebody.
Anything over 6 feet in the air, I call somebody.
Yeah, I will say I'm not the biggest fan of heights. The biggest. Painting your house is another one that is definitely left up to the experts.
Yeah, I have a 3-story house and I have a 40-foot ladder that can just get to the top of it. And there's no way in hell I'm going to get on that ladder to get up there. So I have to call somebody anytime I need to do anything.
For some reason, painting always takes 10 times as long as you think it's going to take. I can't.
Painting's horrible. It's horrible.
Segue from paint, let's talk about screen printing paint.
What? Old school. It's amazing how many people still call it that.
Oh, God. I know. But, those are the people we don't like. So it's okay.
Kind of also I hear silk screening a lot too.
Yes.
Silk screen printing, hand pulled.
Silk screen painting.
It's okay.
That's a veteran.
So last night I got in bed and I wasn't really that tired and I turned HBO on and I was like, well, they're coming out with that new Godzilla versus King Kong. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, I'll watch Kong Skull Island or whatever. And then I started watching it. And the very first thing is Monarch is the company that researches the giant creatures. And I was like, that makes perfect sense because we're going to talk to Aaron tomorrow and he's really into like Bigfoot and Sasquatch and stuff. So like, it's got to be the same company. So
that's right. It's, there's actually a guy in North Carolina that actually creates giant Yetis.
Well, I
as
needed
like lawn yard. And I'm like, I think I need one of those in front of the company.
I've literally tried, like, no joke, called like 3 different company. Well, it's not really a company. It's always a dude in his garage, but they do those chainsaw art, like a big log. And I want him to like carve me a big Sasquatch, but I haven't found anybody able to do it. I found one guy that hit me up on Facebook that said he could do it. And then he showed it to me and I was like, oh, it looks cool. And then he showed me a picture of him standing next to it. And it was like 4 feet tall. And I was like, yeah, it looks like a Sasquatch if I'm like on my knees, but like I need it to be like 8 feet tall.
Yeah, the 4 foot it's the Sasquatch midget.
Right. It was just like it was a, third scale. So
for the people who don't know why you would want a Yeti in the front lawn of the business, tell us about a white that might be called that by that name.
Yeah, so it was. This is going to go back, 5 years ago when we started the Plastisol division. We were trying to figure out, how are we going to name a white? Because let's be honest, all the really cool names have already been taken. So, like, because there's 1,000 whites out there. So what are we going to call our, the first, line of, ink we're going to launch? What are we going to call it? And I literally walk into the vice president of operations office, and there is a Yeti bobblehead. Like, that's it. That's what we're going to name it. So that's kind of how it started. Sense. Yeah. And Yetis are white. So,
right.
They live in the Arctic, as far as we know.
So I guess I want the backstory. Go back, because when we first talked, you told me that like you guys are kind of not necessarily new, but like you've been doing a ton of other stuff before you got into like, plastisols and stuff. So what were you doing before Monarch? And then how did you get to now, I guess? Sure.
So I've been an ink geek for better part of probably 25 years. So it goes all the way back into digital. So I was in the digital spectrum for a long time. Was the commercial director of a company called Sentient Inks. They do dye sublimation, acid reactive, all kinds of inks for digital printing, wide format. And that was really fun. And then had an opportunity to help start a digital pigment ink company. So we went and did that for a little. The whole point of starting that company was actually to sell it. So how do you start a company like that? Like, I know with like screen printing, obviously you're like, oh, I'll buy a press and like, I'll learn how to do this. You're just like, oh, I'm going to start a pigment making. Like, how do you even like get into that? Like, how do you start that company? Well, you first have to have the background of knowing all the players in the digital ink space. And then you've got to know all the players who will actually buy ink from you. So, right. Before you start it, you really go all of your bigger customers and going, okay, if I start this ink company and this is what potentially the ink will do, are you going to buy it from me? And, once you get enough guys that potentially say yes, okay, let's do it. So then you have to find a financial backer. And then once you have the financial backer and the chemist, so basically you've got to have the 3 legs, right? You've got to have the guy who's willing to finance the whole thing. You've got to have, the guy who's basically going to run operations, the plant, and develop the ink. And then you've got to have, the sales guy who's basically going to go out there and basically create the market for it.
Right.
So when we came up with the idea, it was really there are major ink companies that dominate the digital ink space. They're not going to let some small guy come in here who has innovative inks really do anything. I mean, they will do anything and everything to try to make sure you don't get in there. But once you get in there and once you get big enough, they again won't want you in there. So they'll just buy you out. So they buy you out basically for your customer base.
Right.
So we knew once we got up to a certain size, that they would buy us. So
But you said that was your goal in the
that was
beginning.
our whole
anyway.
goal from the beginning. Our goal was in 5 years was to sell the company, to be big enough to basically have a big enough, lure out there that the big guys would come crawling and buy us out.
Right.
And we were able to do it in about 3 years.
Nice.
So after that, the owner of Monarch and I had been talking for a while, and then I did some advisory work for him. And Monarch is a really cool company. I mean, really cool. I mean, their story is amazing. They've been around since 1977. They've got 6 manufacturing facilities, 4 in the United States, 2 in China. The 2 in China really handle the Southeast Asia market space. They don't really do anything in the Americas. We don't actually take any product from over there. And the 4 in the United States are really for regional manufacturing for offset and flexo. So the cool part about that is they're big in that space, in the regional space, and they've really developed a really cool name for themselves. And I'm like, wow, if we could do what you guys have done in offset and flexo and do that in plastisol, that would be something special. Mm-hmm. And really what they've gotten their name for in the offset and flexo arena was color. I mean, no one does color better than Monarch does. And they're known for that in those 2, in the offset and flexo space. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, if we could really do something special in plastisol, that would be cool.
Now, how do you get known for color? Is it like a specific thing with color, or like opacity, or just,
Okay, so now you're talking about a rabbit hole. It really just depends on how far down you want to go.
Let's go, but don't go 2 hours of just that.
Yeah. So are you too familiar with G7 certification?
No.
Okay, so G7 certification for offset as well as flexo means that your cyan, yellow, magenta, and black meet a certain color space, so that if you're supplying that ink to a customer in the Americas and another guy in South America, or multiple plants right across the world, and let's say another ink manufacturer also has a G7 certified ink, that means that plant, let's say that plant is buying from XYZ company in Indonesia, and we've got another company in the Americas, they're printing the exact same thing. Well, if we're supplying them G7 certified inks and that company is supplying them G7 certified inks, theoretically, the 2 print jobs would look exactly the same.
Right.
So first you have to be a G7 certified ink manufacturer to be able to dominate that ink space. Then when it comes to hitting PMS colors, that takes you to a whole nother level. You've got to have formulators and people who can actually match color and be able to formulate to that color and be able to produce that color consistently over and over and over again in the manufacturing space. That takes rigorous QC. The bigger players will just go, close enough and ship it. It's the old just ship it mentality. Monarch's not that way. If it's not within a very finite space, we don't ship it. And I think that's really what differentiated us from everybody else.
I have a picture on my phone that I send back and forth to a couple guys that work here, where it's like it's like a vintage old looking picture of a guy screen printing, and he's got like a screen in his hand. He's looking down at the print, and it says, "Looks like shit. Just run it." And it's just like, I just love that so much. But that's something that's always kind of like been in the back of my mind and wondered like how, because like if we get, obviously with any mixing system, we get inks and they're like, okay, let's mix this ink. And it's like, all right, you need, like 248.57 grams of this color or this pigment, whatever. And then, there's like 6 different ones you have to mix. Like, how do you know that? Is it just trial and error of getting it, trying a little bit of this, trying a little bit of this? Is there like a bunch of math behind it?
There is some math behind it, but also it's being a color wizard. And we have some people in our lab that are just, they're amazing. They can either do offset, flexo, or plastisol, and they can have a color mixed within literally minutes.
Right.
And it's a skill set that I don't have. I do not have that color eye, but just some people have it. It's just, they can actually literally look at a color and go, oh, well, if you add a little green to that, it'll actually hit it.
Right.
Where in my eye, I'm looking, well, I thought like red or purple or yellow.
Yeah.
You're like, no, this color.
Yeah.
It's a really cool. It's really cool when you see him do it. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of printers do that too. Like they'll take that picture for Instagram or whatever, where it's like a cup of all the pigments in it. And they're like, guess what color this turns into? And everybody's always just like saying random colors. And then when they mix it, it's like nowhere near what you thought it was going to be.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's really fascinating. Now I will say that, and that's really what we wanted to bring to when we first launched this company not launched the company, but launched the division in Plastisol.
Right.
That's really what we wanted to accomplish, was bringing that type of color rigidity, or, really being specific about a specific color to this industry, because this industry doesn't have it right now. I mean, I remember 5 years ago when we were looking at, different types of way of marketing the ink. I remember picking up a competitor's bucket of a PMS color, and it says right on the label, maybe plus or minus one PMS color from Target.
Oh no.
And this came actually out of their plant. And I'm just thinking to myself going, well, on some colors, that's actually not that bad. Those will be close. But on other colors, man, if you're off by one PMS color, that is huge.
Well, think about if you're like a small to medium sized shop and you finally get that big client that has like specific logo Pantones. Like you'd say you're going to do stuff for like an NFL team or something, and you buy that ink and they get the shirts and they're like, actually, this is supposed to be 123 and it's 124.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do? You're just like, I just bought the color pre-mixed. And they're like, well, you bought the wrong one.
Well, so that actually we ran into that exact problem about 3 years ago. A customer had, I don't know how they're printing the California lottery in North Carolina, but he had won the contract to print these California lottery shirts. And he used someone else's ink to get the shirt approved about 3 to 4 months prior. And they had told him, and they made up the PMS color for him. They had told him that that's the PMS color. So he gets it approved from the California lottery, and then he decides to use our ink rather than that one. So he has us make up that PMS color. Yeah, the PMS color that he got approved by the California lottery was not the PMS color that they called out. And so then we're in this quandary going, okay, do they actually want the PMS color that they called out, or do they want the one that they approved on the shirt?
Yeah, they want the one they approved, and he has no idea what that is now.
Correct. He had no idea what it was.
Right.
Well,
it's kind of like, I mean, it's cool that he wanted to use you guys, but it's kind of a bonehead move to like pick and like use one system, get it approved, and then pick another system. Like, you probably shouldn't have done that.
Well, I think what ended up, and I think in his mind, I think what he was doing was, okay, this is a great job to convert over to yours. They had already made us up this PMS color. He had no idea that the PMS color was off.
Right.
I mean, why would you think that? The company made the PMS color in their plant, so why would it be off?
Yeah.
That's one thing we do whenever we start a big run, is that we make sure we have enough ink, because if you run out during that run, right, and you have to either order some more in or make a new batch, I hate that, because to hit it exactly right, well, that's tough. And so what you're saying is if you're shipping, or if your formulas are within one, or actually tolerance is better or less than one, well, that's what you want as a printer, to be able to remake or remix a color and hit it again. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So are you familiar with delta E's?
No.
When it comes to color? So a delta E is the deviation that a color can have in regards to the color curve in order that the human eye can actually see it. So it's really how far off you are from the designated color curve. So PMS, so all the Pantone, when the new Pantone book comes out comes the new color curves as well. And those actually get downloaded into a computer system. And that computer system then will actually read the printed color you have through a camera, and then compare that to the curve that they've got in the computer system that says, okay, this is the curve for that particular PMS color. A delta E is then how far off the color is that you made versus the color curve that it is, right? So the human eye can't see a delta E of under 2 outside of fluorescent colors. Fluorescent colors, you got to get them pretty close. But if you're a delta E of 2 or under, your eye's not going to see it. Our lab tries to get it under a delta E of 1, which means you're not more than 1% off of that color curve, which is hard. I mean, that's tight QC. So when we do our, when you look at our PMS formulator and you see a small little R on it, that means we've actually registered that next to the color curve given to us by Pantone, and you are guaranteed that that color will not be off more than one delta E of 1.
Now, how close are you guys to getting all of them registered?
We are, I would say we're probably 50 to 60% of the way through. It doesn't mean the rest of the ones that don't have that little small R aren't correct. It's just the new ones will be more correct. So,
right. What's the other thing with Pantone too? Like you get a book 1 year and then you get a book like 2 years later and there's like a ton more colors in it. You're like, how we were fine with all the colors we had 2 years ago. Where did you find more?
Okay. So little known thing about Pantone. So Pantone used to be a not-for-profit company. That is not the case anymore. So Pantone is now owned by a company called Dover. Dover is a huge conglomerate that owns a bunch of commercial printing, press companies, ink companies. So it's not an independent organization anymore.
Right.
So
they have to keep making colors, so you have to buy more books.
Correct. So and there's huge changes with existing colors. So I can take a book that was made in 2006 and a book that's made in 2020, and it's the exact same PMS color, but they're different. I mean, they will physically look different.
I had that happen, and I thought it was that our book faded. I thought it was my fault. Like, wow, why is this color different from the new Pantone book? Is it, I guess this book's no good. It faded out or something,
Well, something else to remember is they're printed offset. So you're assuming that theoretically, all books should be basically equal, but they're not. So you will see some huge changes from book to book, just even in the 2020 books.
Gotcha.
We have a book that I think it's like the first book we bought like 11 years ago or whatever. And just literally the other day, like last Thursday, Brian handed it to me. He's like, do you want this? Like, you can't even fucking, like, if you open it up, like almost every color is completely like wiped off. Like it looks like snow all over the whole thing because the pages have rubbed together so much. And he's like, do you want this? And I was like, I think I want to hang it up. Like, I kind of want to do the full, like, spread open, put it on the wall, just because it's one of those, like, this thing's been through hell. Like, it lasted this long. Like, we don't use it anymore, but still, it's like, it's beat to hell. I think last year I went through and bought, like, all new books. I know you're supposed to buy them, like I said, like every, whatever it is, year or two or whatever it is. But I think I bought them, like, every 4 years. And we just recently bought the new ones last year. So,
yeah, this last year, they actually, by the way, I can't stand the way they actually have the colors now listed. They used to be in numerical order.
Dude, I know.
And now
that's a huge pain in the ass.
You can't find a PMS color if you tried now.
I used to be able to, like, I got mine right here on my desk, and I used to be able to go through and be like, okay, whatever it is, 134, and look for 134. But then it goes like 644. Very next page is like 7,452. Like, no joke. I just looked at that, and it's like,
they make no sense.
Why does it do that?
Yeah,
but now you can go to the last, whatever it is, like 15 pages and look at, I want to find Pantone 445. It's on page 239, row 5.
Yeah. That's the first thing I do if I'm looking for a color.
Like,
I never
why?
even try. All right. So every shop wants a perfect everyday low bleed white.
Yes.
I mean, that's such a big thing. I see that all over Facebook groups. I mean, we ourselves, a few years back, looked for the perfect low bleed white, just the everyday white. And I mean, it's a big deal,
Just white in general.
Yeah, white in general. But
White's the thing that every shop fights about. They're like, well, what do you use? What white do you use? Oh, that one sucks. And it's like, no, it doesn't. It's totally fine.
Well, what you have to understand, first of all, is that you have to know how to print the white. So there's a lot that goes behind printing the perfect white. But still, it does matter.
Amen, by the way. Amen to that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's we still get it wrong sometimes, but we've taken the necessary steps and we have most of it right. But but still you want a white that works for you. And even though you're doing all these things right out of the bucket, or even I should say off the turnabout, whites are different still. And so, but we happen to love Stark, and without giving away any secrets or too many secrets, or maybe just one or two secrets, like why is Stark so great?
So there was a study done
at NASA.
At NASA, correct. At an area to be disclosed later, that they actually discovered the perfect viscosity curve for plastis or for screen printing ink, putting it on a press. And that is, so the viscosity curve basically takes an ink from when you first put it on the screen on how the viscosity of the ink changes throughout the entire process till the end, right? So it starts off a little stiff, then it loosens up, and then pretty much all inks towards the end will actually, as you start running out of ink in the screen, will stiffen back up again. So it's what is that curve and what does that curve look like? So, you know, I would love to say that, you know, we formulated it to that curve, but we really didn't. It just happened to exactly hit that curve. I mean, almost perfectly. And then all the, you know, it was one of those things that we didn't even know what we had until we launched it. And then it was, OMG, this thing is literally take the industry by storm. And we're realizing it's because we hit that curve. Part of it too, though, is also opacity. And also a lot of it is, you know, the raw ingredients that you put in it as well. Modern inks are very, I mean, if you take ink formulations that are made in the last 5 years compared to the ones that were made 15 years ago, they are drastically different. I mean, drastically different. You know, another thing, this one's I wouldn't call it a trade secret, but it's something that we do no one else still does is we still 3-roll mill our ink. So you guys know what a 3-roll mill is?
Yeah. So this is part of the conversation we had that blew my mind back when we talked a few months ago. And I think you had the same conversation with Dylan. And this is what made me, I think Dylan too, want to have you on. So yeah, could you please, because I kind of forgot what it is, but I kind of know. So yeah, tell us again, if you would.
Sure. So, you know, for the most part, most plastisol manufacturers, basically they're a giant bakery, right? They dump a bunch of ingredients in together, mix it up, and there's your ink. Well, a 3-roll mill is basically these 3 huge cylinders that go on top of this press, and the ink basically gets crushed in between these 3 cylinders until it reaches a certain particle size. Once it meets a certain particle size, it then pours off of the 3rd roll. So basically it completely emulsifies the ink into one another, and everything is the exact same particle size or less. So it gives you an incredibly creamy, smooth ink. And we actually do that with all of our inks. So it's not just the Stark, it's the Apocalypse, it's the Yetis, it's the Bigfoots, it's all the colors. Any ink we make goes over a press. And
I don't know if this has anything to do with that or not, but like we basically used, like when we first started the company, the very first thing I did, and back then, like I said, 11 years ago, the biggest thing in my mind was I want to get the best ink I can possibly get. And in my mind back then, it was like what you hear about, what you've tried, whatever. And it was like, I want to use Wolflex. It was like, all right, I'm going to use Wolflex. So when we started the Upstate, I immediately bought the Wolflex system. And then we figured out how to use it. It was the pigment system. And we literally used that for 10 years. Like I never switched, never changed anything, just used that system the entire time. And then me and you had a conversation. And again, your ultra nerdiness on ink is what, no joke. That's what literally drew me in to be like, nobody's ever taken the time to have this conversation with me. And that goes, me and Andy talk about that all the time. That goes like leaps and bounds for us on somebody we trust and somebody we want to work with, that they know enough about their product. They're not just a salesman that's like, what did I read out of the pamphlet to tell this guy to get him to use my inks? And it was like just diving deep into that stuff. But once I learned about your guys' inks, it was kind of like, all right, I definitely want to try it. And I told you straight up, I was like, the biggest problem I'm having is opacity. Like and I told you that straight up. I was like, we have this ink mixing system. It works fine. We're happy with it. Like the inks look good. The prints look fine. But there's a dozen colors that we know when it goes on press, we're going to either have to like double hit it, like PFP it, or just do something to it to make it more opaque. And that's annoying. Like that sucks. And we call them fruit roll up prints. Like when we do a print, and I can't remember what it was right now. It's a blue. It was like 2 something, where we printed it, and we called it fruit roll up because it was just like see through. It looked like a fruit.
You're talking about printing on an underbase, right?
Yeah, printing on an underbase. The blue just looked thin, and you could see white through it. It was translucent. And I told you, I was like, this one is the one that gives us the most headaches. Like, mix me a cup of it, mail it to me, and we'll try it out. And that's what we did. We put it on press, and we printed the Wolflex one, and we printed yours. And yours was where we would want it to be if we had to literally flash print that blue with 1 stroke. And I was like, all right, send me the fucking kit. Like, send me the whole thing. We're going to do this. And then the thing was, I was like, well, if I'm going to go all in, I'm going to go all in. And you sent me Stark too. And I tried Stark, and I didn't say anything. Like, I didn't say anything in my printers about the conversation we had. I just said, here's new white. We're going to try it, print it. Let me know what you think. Both of the guys were like, I love it. It's super creamy. It looks great, whatever. I was like, all right, cool. Just keep printing with it. Let me know, like, just unbiased opinion. Let me know how you feel about it. They don't give a shit. They just want to print. They want it to look cool, whatever. And then winter hits here, and it gets cold as shit here because we're in New York. And the problem we usually have, and it's funny too, because I bought 2. This was the first year I was going to be like, I'm going to buy the crock pots. Like, I was going to buy a crock pot, put a little bit of water in it, put my white cups in it in the morning so that I had warm, creamy ink to work with when the guys walked in at 9 o'clock. So I buy these 2 fucking crock pots. And that was literally the same time we got Stark. We got like a bunch of 5s from you. And we turn the turnabout on in the morning when we get here. They take the ink out, put it in the screen, goes right into printing. Like, creamy ink right off the bat. Like, no, let's stir the shit out of it. Let's put it on top of the dryer. Let's heat it up for an hour before we can actually use it. Because before, with the other white inks we were using, we would have ghosting issues first thing in the morning because the ink was so thick and it was cold, whatever. Yeah, you can turn on the turnabout, but you got to wait a while for it to stir the whole thing, whatever. So we used to have a policy where, like, they had to basically dump the ink back in at the end of the night, in the morning, let the turnabout go for a while, take it out of there. So it was already mixed up, go right into printing. We didn't have to do that with Stark. We literally take it right out of the 5, put it in the screen, it prints, no issues right from the get-go in the morning. And I called you and AJ and was like, hey, send me fucking 10 pails or whatever it was. Like, it's good to go. And that wasn't anything you told me. That was just something that we found out. And that was just the reason why I was like, this is what we're going to use from now on.
We do realize at a certain point in time, I can only say so much before you're like, oh yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I will say that has been the hardest thing, I will say, as far as us really just taking the market by storm, has been everybody like, well, you're not Wolflex, you're not Rutland, you're not Union, you're not, let's talk about, all the companies that are now basically one. You're not any of those guys. So how are you, little, offset flexo manufacturer, able to do what none of these guys are able to do?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the number one question I get is, well, you can't do that because they can't do that. And it's almost gets to a point where they just don't believe you, right? There's just no way your inks can do that. Well, yeah, just try them.
Right. That's the thing. Like, I don't know enough. I'm not smart enough to make these claims, but like, to me, it's just one of those things. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of things. Like, they're just like, we make inks, they work. People buy them still. I bought up all these companies. We're one massive ink manufacturer. They still work. But then a company like you guys comes along and you're like, no, let's like do the extra steps. It's like how we feel with our print company. It's like, we're not just like all the other print companies. We try to take all the extra steps as we can and buy like all this special manufacturing equipment to get that, like, it's here. We know it's here. We're not here and we're okay with it. We're up here and that's where we want to stay. And I feel like that's what you guys did, is like, no, let's, do this triple roll fancy machine. Let's, put everything we can into it to make it the best ink we can make. So that's really what we're going to try to build our name on is, right. And the reality of it is, when you're going up against the behemoth, that's really all you can do, right? We can't
create a really good Me Too product. That's just going to go, it's going to fail every time.
Right.
I mean, for us to succeed against guys of that size, you've got to be doing it better than them. You have to be. You can't, especially when you're building a name for yourself, you can't afford, it's just like you guys when you're printing. You can't afford a bad print job. You can't afford for that one shirt to go out to a customer when it's a brand new customer and that one shirt doesn't look good, especially when you're trying to build your brand, right? So when you're trying to build a brand, we know that we've got to be doing it better and we've got to be doing it the right way every time. And there's no shortcuts.
Well, I know, Andy, for years, you've definitely been one of those guys that's tried everything, I feel like. Can you talk about that a little bit on all the different whites that you've tried and all the different inks you've tried? Because I have two. I literally went from Wilflex to Monarch. Like, we've tried other whites, like whites and blacks, but like as far as just ink systems and using all the different brands, I've never kind of done that.
Sure, Dylan. I'll give that a shot. Let's see.
Thanks, bud.
Well, I think it goes back a few years, and we brought a few inks in to test out because we were on this. We were trying to find the best white ink in the world, and so how were we going to do that? We were going to print just like side by side comparison, and so that was the only way we really knew how. And so we got one. I think it was on a Saturday. We came in. And I lined up the inks like in a row and took a picture and I put it on Instagram. And I said kind of what we're doing. And at that time, I think I only had maybe 5 or 6 samples in here to test out. And every ink company hit me up like in the world, like basically in the world. And they said, hey, try ours. And so I had to wait a few more weeks and we got everyone else's in. I mean, from all over the world, really. Like I had inks come in from India and stuff, like, hey, test ours out. And so there were a lot of good white inks out there for sure. Some of them were so close. I mean, you were talking about the, what was it? The G7? No, G4. The
certification?
GC. What was the certification within 2%?
Oh, you're talking about the PMS color curves.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the human eye could probably not pick up some of the differences in these whites. Whites do different things. Some whites cure at certain temperatures. Some whites have blowing agents in them, so they puff up a little. And they all do a little bit different. It seems like, but then there's these ones that all kind of like I was looking for an everyday low bleed white. And also, we really like one that doesn't have too long of a body. I mean, the ones that when you scoop them up and they can just drip almost, or they fall down. I just can't stand that. That doesn't work on our press very well. What we're trying to do, and so we eliminated those. And anyway, we found a few that rose to the top, and then a guy named Steven from Campus Ink said, "Hey, have you tried Monarch?" I said, "Never heard of it," and so that's how I ended up calling you. And so we gave it a shot. And for us anyway, and for what we do, we love it. I got a drum.
I heard.
Eddie didn't go out and buy a gallon to try. He bought a fucking drum.
Go big or go home.
Didn't even have a pumping system. He was like, "Oh, I'll just hold the guy by the legs and let him scoop it out of the bottom."
I've heard that's the easiest way. Is just scoop it out with your hands.
And then you just end up with a giant white streak across your chest because you leaned in over the top.
No gloves or anything. Just put your hands in there and scoop it out.
I don't use a scoop in my bucket either. I just use my ninja hand and I just scoop it out like this and just wipe it off on the side.
Sometimes as you get down towards the bottom, if you actually hold a guy upside down by his legs,
right,
works pretty good.
Right.
Yeah. I don't volunteer for that.
That job sucks.
So I don't know if that, answered the question what you were trying to go at, Dylan. But it works really well for us. And of course you look at price too. That has to factor into it. And so it has to fit in the right. I'm willing to pay more for an ink that's going to save time or money or look better on press. I'm willing to pay more, but how much more, and so.
We didn't even ask, honestly, when we switched over, I didn't really get into that conversation with AJ until right when we were ready to order. And he was showed me all the pricing for everything. It was basically the exact same thing I was doing before. So I was like, okay, yeah, let's
So when you send Dylan an invoice, just charge him more. I think that because he doesn't.
Yeah, I don't look at it anyway.
That's what I heard.
I don't even look at it. I'm just like, just charge my card. I got more than enough.
It's like whatever.
Yeah, just chump change.
But sometimes that low bleed white isn't enough.
Yep.
And we feel really safe with it on most things, but there's these things that come along, or garments that come along that will fuck you up. And that's where I think I want to learn more about this ULT Shield Gray, because we've been using what we have. We had this barrier gray, and it's basically gone now. And so it's time to buy a new blocker or a new shield. And so how does yours work?
So I guess my question would be
it's just pure charcoal.
Pure charcoal. Here's the thing. We go out to the barbecue
after a good
smoke, and it's just North Carolina after all. We are the state of barbecue, so there's a lot of that around.
I didn't know this. Did you, Dylan? State of barbecue is North Carolina. I thought it was for sure St. Louis, or not.
I'm all about barbecue. You lost me as soon as you said barbecue. I was like, I
am hungry.
Right. So I guess continue. I'll still think about food though.
No, it's all good. But no, so when you say shield gray, I don't automatically think of a dye blocker. So when you have two ways of dye blocking. One is if you're going to do a shield gray and a white, then a color, you're adding 3 layers, right?
Okay.
So if you could only do 2, it would actually be better.
Yeah, it's one less screen.
Correct.
And also less.
And your print isn't bulletproof.
Right.
Correct. So that's the downside to a barrier gray, is it basically adds a really, because no matter whose barrier gray you're going to use, as soon as you add charcoal to it, it's going to get really firm and it's going to be a pretty stiff print. So we actually made a product called ULT2. It's a white. It cures at 270 degrees. You can cure it all the way to 320 if you want. It bleed blocks better than most, if not all, gray dye blockers. The only time you may want to use a gray dye blocker, like our Shield Gray, would be if you're doing digital camo.
Dude, digital camo is the worst.
Mm-hmm.
We won't even do it anymore. We did it for a couple of years, and people were like, "Oh, we want to." There was like a phase where every troop or every fucking person that had a group of people wanted a shirt. It was always digital camo, and they all bled. No matter what we could do triple layers of gray, this on it. They all bled. And like, I know there's gonna be people listening to this and be like, "Well, I know the perfect way to do it." And it's like, hey, fuck you. I don't care.
So
it sucks, and I'm not doing it ever again.
So what you're saying is, hold on the ULT gray. Don't use that on stuff that's going, unless it's like that digital camo, like you just said. And that you have this new low cure white called ULT. What did you say, 2?
2. Yep.
Okay.
So the ULT2 was specifically designed for bleed blocking. That is literally its whole goal in life, is to ensure you get a bright white and nothing bleeds through it.
What's its cure temp at?
270.
All right. So if that's the case, and let's say you're not just printing white and you're printing top colors too, you can use this as an underbase, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, correct.
So you use it as an underbase, and then you go on top of it with a color that has to cure at 300. Well, then that's a problem. And I think it's a problem anyway.
No, well, you said it goes from 270 or 280 or whatever, all the way up to 320 and still.
Yeah, but my point is if it's curing at 270, you want to cure everything at 270. And so, you're wanting to not get that shirt that hot. So the dyes want to migrate up, right? And so you want to stay down. You want your oven to be
generally under 300.
Yeah. So theoretically, dyes start to gas out at 300 degrees. I've seen them gas out before that, but pretty much at 300 degrees. So welcome to the conundrum of low temp versus standard cure temp inks, right? So do I go low temp or do I go standard temp? Which way do I want to go? I really don't want to have a shop that's got both, because that just sounds confusing. And it really is. You've either got to make a commitment to go low temp or you stay standard temp. And it doesn't mean you can't use a low temp white as your under barrier, because you can. It's still going to cure fine. Where you're going to have an issue is if you're going to cure a standard cure temp ink, but instead of curing it at 320, you're going to try curing it at 360 or 370. That's where you're going to start running into issues. So the one thing I try to tell everybody is, curing plastisol ink is like baking. It's not like broiling, right? So if you think about if you were to broil a pie, right, the crust is going to get done, but then you're going to have this gooey center that didn't really get baked. It may even still be cold, and it's really not going to congeal at all. Well, that's the same thing with plastisol ink. If you're trying to shove it through your oven at 360, 370 for 25 to 30 seconds, you're not going to get a very good cure. It may cure, you might pass your stress test, but it's not going to have very good washability. Inks were designed for a certain temp and dwell time. Modern inks, I will say anything that's been developed probably in the last 3 to 5 years, ink temp really doesn't play a part anymore. It's more of oven temp and dwell time. And depending on what your oven temp is, will depend on what your dwell time is, as well as what type of fabric you're putting in. So if you're printing or you're using a standard cure temp ink and you're curing at 320, that underbase is great. Even if it's at a 270 cure, it'll do just fine.
So I guess I'm a little confused because I always thought that if I have a low temp underbase, like you're talking about that 270, and then I put a standard ink on top that needs to cure it higher, like at 3 or between 3 and 320.
Yeah.
Am I defeating the purpose of using that, because I'm curing it higher, that underbase, and I'm trying to stay under 300. So I really need to be, like you said, I need to commit and have those top colors also low cure so that I can keep that dryer low.
Correct. So that's the optimum case. I mean, in the perfect world, if you're printing on a purple, maroon hoodie or anything polyester, or there's a couple other jerseys out there that are god awful. In a perfect world, you're going to be using the ULT2 and low temp colors, and you'll never, ever, ever have to worry about bleed. Right. If that's not if you don't have the ability to do that, because let's just say your product mix is most of what you're printing on is, blends and cottons. Well, there's no point of going out and getting low temp.
Sure.
So at that point, it's the best you can do at that point is to take advantage of the bleed properties of that ULT2, even though you were theoretically curing it at a higher temp. And you also got to remember, you've got ink over the top of it, so it's probably not going to get up to 300 degrees.
So you're telling me that the ULT2 does its job as a on poly, even when it gets at 300 or above 300, it'll still do its job as blocking. I see. So it doesn't have to be cured.
That's why he said it has that range of.
Has that range, yeah.
Right. All right.
Well,
I'm a little slower, Dylan. So
it's okay. I know. I'm with you. I've been doing this long enough with you to understand.
I'm getting slower by the minute.
I see the wheels spinning. Tell me how do you feel about like a low cure additive into a regular plastisol ink, like a 320 cure?
I think it's great if you're trying to convert from standard cure temp to low temp inks. I think it's a great idea. So you're not throwing, you're not pitching a bunch of ink. Do I think it's a great long-term solution? No.
Because that's something that we've done for quite a while is we didn't have, like, we don't do a lot of school stuff or a lot of polyester items. Like that's not our wheelhouse at all. But we do get people, like locally or, anywhere around the world where they know us, they want to work with us. They're like, hey, we want 100% poly race shirts or whatever. Everybody gets those jobs where it's 100% poly. So what we're just doing is we're using a performance white, some kind of, low cure white. And then we're mixing an ink with whatever system we're using. Before it was Wolflex, now it's Monarch. We'll put in whatever it is, 6% low cure additive. And then we'll cure the whole job at, below 300.
I think that's fine for jobs that you have that are outside your wheelhouse that,
right.
Hey, every once in a while.
I just want to make sure that's not the wrong approach. You're like, holy shit, you're using low cure additive. Like, I want to make sure like that's totally fine. It's good. I mean, I've never had anybody complain unless they get, a digital camo and then we have to redo the whole job. But
right.
No,
Now in those, so we actually make something that's really kind of fascinating that no one else in the industry that I know of makes, which is actually called a dye test kit. So basically what you do on this dye test kit is it's a liquid that you put on the fabric that you plan on printing on that you think is going to bleed, right? And you put 2 cotton swabs on, or basically cotton fabric on both sides, part of the kit. And you basically put it in a heat press at whatever temperature you plan on curing it at for basically 7 seconds. And you'll see how bad the dyes bleed out.
That's awesome. Well, how have I not heard of this before?
I don't know.
So what do? Do you see the color in the cotton swabs?
Yeah. And you'll see how bad. So basically you can actually create a wall of pass fail. So, okay, if you see this little bit of dye, okay, we know the ULT tube will block all of that. If it looks like this, yeah, we're pretty much going to have to use barrier gray. Now, the other thing you can do is I highly recommend everybody getting a toaster oven.
I mean, I like toast. I like bagels.
Well, it's not just for toasting bagels anymore. You can actually stick a shirt. Like, so let's say there's one that you think is on a borderline.
Aaron's trying to teach us how to burn our shop to the ground.
Yes. Yes, I am. Well, it's the cheap way of doing it. Otherwise, I'd say go get a lab oven, and most shops aren't going to be able to afford that. So toaster oven is a great way to cheat the system. So you can actually stick it in a toaster oven at 125 degrees for 24 hours, and it'll emulate what the residual bleed will look like in a week. So you know how a lot of stuff you can print on, and when you first look at it, it looks great. And a week later, your white is no longer white, especially if you print it on a maroon shirt. Now it looks pink.
Right.
Well, if you do that and put it in the oven for 24 hours, it speeds up the process, and it'll show you what that shirt's going to look like in a week.
You're saying send it through your dryer normally like you would, but then stick it in this toaster oven for 24 hours.
No, it's a 2-step process, right? So the first thing you're going to do is actually put it in a heat press at whatever temperature you're
right.
at.
Okay, gotcha.
For 7 seconds. That'll give you your initial bleed test. And you'll know whether or not you're going to have a massive bleeder or not. If you do, then what you do is you print on that fabric, stick it in that oven for 24 hours. And
are you thinking like right now?
all I'm hearing is that do this bleed test. If it looks like shit, throw that shirt in a toaster oven and burn your shop to the ground, because you're never going to figure it out.
Give up.
That's all I'm hearing right now.
Well, I just wrote down order dye test kit because
I'm definitely doing that. I'm definitely trying that out.
It would be
the dye test kit is awesome. It really is. And if you can instantly tell when they start failing, and that's when you know, okay, I'm going to need a barrier gray for that one.
I really hope it's like a Ziploc baggie with like 2 cotton balls in it, and like
it's like $50.
like a little thing of like Dawn dish soap. He's like, he wrote Monarch on it in marker.
We did actually, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah,
sounds like a deal.
Well, one thing we talked about that I kind of want to elaborate on this a little bit is when I was talking to you about what system I should get and the kind of printing we do, you were really telling me like, hey, maybe this system, the Vivid system, is the best for you because of doing a lot of simulated process, a lot of other stuff versus getting. Because like I said, when I was talking to you, as I was like, a lot of the printers I know are all going to like the lower cure inks. Like everybody was like, oh, I want to do 270. I want to do 270. Can you tell us the drawbacks of going that route versus going with the standard cure? Because we were talking about it and you were like, oh, well, if you're doing simulated process, it actually, works out a little bit better this way. So
it does. And so the inherent downside to low temp inks is low temp resins are a little tacky, and they just are. That's just an inherent part of low temp resins. Well, so when you start looking at the tackiness of an ink, it's not really conducive to doing 7 and 8 color simulated process wet on wet, because eventually you're going to start sticking to the back of the screens.
Right.
So, for athletic printing, I think it's great. I think low temp inks are great for hoodies, your 3-color jobs, really bright, solid colors. If that's the type of work that, you as a printer do, I think low temp inks work great. But now if you're not, and you're more of the guy who likes doing either 4-color process work or simulated process work, and we're looking at 7, 8, up to 9 colors, wet on wet.
Well, even if you're just doing spot colors and you're doing a 12 color print or whatever,
Yeah,
you're going to want to do as much wet on wet as you can do.
correct.
What's
So
what's the cost difference between the low temp and standard inks?
For Monarch, about $20 a gallon.
Percentage.
Like higher on the standard ink or higher on the low cure?
No, higher on the low cure.
Yeah.
What's that convert to percent wise? Any idea? Like if a gallon,
Hurry up, do some math.
like 20% higher cost, you know, like I don't know how much I was just curious, like what you're, you know, if you're, so like you said earlier, if you're not a shop that needs to cure low temp, don't, because you're going to be paying, you know, $20 more a gallon.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that though. Like the whole selling point for me that I've heard from a lot of people on the fact of doing low cure inks is that they can speed the dryer speed up, or they can, you know, turn the dryer down and they're not using as much electric or gas. Or
According to Aaron, you don't want to speed that dryer up.
No, I know, but I'm just saying that like a lot of people are like, well, that's the benefit of doing it, is that you're not cranking everything. But I guess Aaron, you tell us about that, I guess.
Well, so here's a couple of things. Yeah, I would agree. If you're a shop that doesn't need low temp, there's really no point of going there. To me, you're just paying for something you really don't need. It's overkill. And again, there's some inherent downsides to low temp ink. Some of the inherent downsides is they're incredibly fast flashing, like really fast. So if you're a manual shop who, you know, prints, you know, moves his screen over to his flash unit, and while he's doing his next print, happens to be talking to the guy next to him, but happens to be leaving it under the flash at the exact same time,
You're over flashing.
yeah, you've probably re-wet the ink. So
That was something you talked to me about too, that I never realized was a thing. So go into that too.
Yeah, if you flash an ink for too long, you can actually re-wet it, which means it'll basically turn into plastic. I mean, it'll literally turn shiny like a PVC pipe. And the new modern inks, and it's not just Monarch's modern inks, it's pretty much any new formulation that's been out in the last 3-4 years, they're really fast flashing. I mean, a perfect example is, you know, Quick White Wolflex's Quick White had been the standard of fast flashing whites forever. It's considered slow in today's modern formulations. I mean, the Stark White flashes 30% faster than the Quick White does. So, and it's not like we created a fast flashing ink specifically for fast flashing. It's just a modern formulation. So, you know, the more modern the ink, the faster it's going to flash. So you're looking at, you know, maybe a 3-second flash at most. And we get calls all the time going, well, God, I'm flashing this. I've flashed this thing for like 10 seconds and it's still wet. Yeah.
I've ran into that. Like, I'll admit that before I knew anything about that, we've done like low cure inks with jobs and we hate doing them, but we've had that where we're like, this thing, like it'll pop on the next screen because like we flashed it, and it's either you flash it too much and you scorch or burn the shirt or whatever, or the ink, like we would always have that issue where he'd be like, oh, like if I flash this any longer, I'm going to burn the shirt, but the ink's not flashing yet. And it's like, actually we were probably doing is we were over flashing it, making it wet again. And then when we go to the next screen, it's sticking to the back of the screen, it's popping, and we're having all kinds of issues and everything else.
Yeah, so flashing, you really want to only get the ink. The ink is going to flash between the 220F and 280F for like all of 3 seconds. It just needs to be in that zone. Some of the newer flashes, which I think are totally cool now, is where they've got an IR sensor and they're actually reading the fabric temp. Those are awesome. I mean, when you talk about bleeding, a lot of the time it's not the dryer. A lot of the time it starts on the flash unit. So if I've got an older flash and my fabric temperature is getting above 300 degrees at the flash, well, I've already started the gassing out problem on the flash. So even if I cure it at, you know, 280 in the dryer, the bleeding already started in the flash.
That makes sense.
A lot of people don't think that. They just think of the dryer. They don't think of the flash unit.
Right. And the flash, you're hitting it with intense heat, like especially a quartz flash, you know, all of a sudden. But yeah, we ended up doing that. We ended up switching over the flashes to the red chili Ds with the sensor. So that was super important. I know, Andy, you went and bought like 35 of them all at once there that one time.
Yeah, bought all they had.
Yeah, since using those, I mean, we use those in our demo room. They're amazing.
So I guess the 1-2 punch would be stark white for your everyday white, low bleed. And then for the problematic garments, this ULT2. It sounds like anyway. Is that what you recommend?
Yeah. Then I would have a gallon of the Shield Gray sitting on the shelf that I may not use for a year, but I'm going to run into that one job that it's going to need it. And I just want to make sure I've got it on the shelf when I need it.
Got you.
And I don't know if you know a lot about this. We might have to talk to somebody else about this, like a manufacturer, but I've heard that it's all in the product you buy too, as far as like how they dye the shirt, like if it's going to give you a lot of problems on press. Like we've done that when we bought like a Gildan, like their 4,200 or whatever, they're 100% poly T, and we try to print on it. We almost always had dye issues on those shirts. And then we pretty much stopped selling them completely. And we only sell now A4, which is one that we really like, that we rarely ever, if at all, have dye issues. So I think it was just like how they dye them, I guess.
Well, so that actually is the problem. So the way you set dye in fabric is you basically got to get it up to 360, 370 F for basically 4 hours. And that sets the dye into the fabric. Okay, well, if I'm not in the United States and I'm doing it, and I could do it for 2.5 hours, is anybody going to notice? And can I get an extra roll in today? So my production goes up, right? So no one really knows which one's got set at 2.5 hours and which one's got set at 4 hours. Mm-hmm. And the reality of it is no one sees it unless you try to decorate on it. The washability is the same. Everything else looks the same unless I try decorating. And that's where you start seeing the issues. Well, if you've ever noticed that you can order the exact same shirt and only the larges are the ones that bleed and no other size does.
100%. Yes.
Well, the reason why that is because the dye lot roll for larges happen to roll out that particular fabric roll, right? Mm-hmm. So they take that fabric roll out, put the large die cut on, and then when they roll out that particular roll, it was all larges. And that's the reason only that size bleeds and none of the other ones do.
Right, because somebody did that lot of fabric at 2.5 hours instead of 4.
Yeah, or somewhere in between. You know what I mean? I mean, right. It could be 3 hours. I mean, who knows? But
right. Just not the optimum amount of time.
Correct. Right. And that's why typically you'll see it comes from certain locations. Mm-hmm. So
I mean, it totally makes sense. And that's kind of what I was getting at, is more of like the budget shirt versus the one I'm paying more for. Like, I really hope that the one I'm paying more for, they actually fucking do it for the right amount of time, because that sucks if I'm paying more for a shirt they're doing the exact same way. But in our experience, we just, like I said, picked a little bit better of a brand, and it had nothing really to do with the brand name. It was just more like, this seems like a more of a premium shirt with testing and whatever else we did. But that to us was, like I said, what we ended up doing is saying, we're not going to sell that shirt anymore. Like, if you need it and we're putting black ink on it, fine. But if you need it and we have to do a 6-color front, 2-color back, we're going to go with the A4 instead.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. I wanted to we didn't get through real quick on the low temp versus standard temp on simulated process work. So at least for Monarch's inks, our standard cure temp inks, and this is the number one reason why I suggested you do it for simulated process, is our inks retain their vertical stack better, so you get reduced dot gain. So it makes your images significantly more crisp when you're doing simulated process or even process color work.
A vertical stack better? Is that what you just said?
Yeah, vertical stack is better. So if you can imagine, you lay your ink in a certain spot. Well, if it kind of goes after you print it, well, now you get huge dot gain, because now your image is kind of fuzzy and all over the place. Where if I can actually retain that vertical stack and the dot stays where it's supposed to stay, now my image is significantly more crisp.
They make their ink molecules like checkers. They got the little teeth on them, so they can stack on top of each other. That's all I'm seeing in my
Dylan,
mind.
quit giving away all of the secrets.
He's like, what we did is we just mimicked checkers.
Actually, to be honest with you, it was Legos. We almost came this close to sponsoring Lego Masters.
All right. I mean, that makes sense.
All right. So for 2021, what's new? What's new for you guys?
What's new for Monarch?
New products?
We are going to have some new products coming out. So one of the, I wouldn't necessarily holes in our lineup, but so our Yeti low bleed, which is the low bleed version of the Yeti ULT2, cures at 290 and I'd rather cure at 280. So we're going to launch one that comes out that actually cures at 280 and it'll actually have a slightly lower price point than the current Yeti low bleed. So that pretty much eliminates any issues of me wanting to stick my dryer at 280. If you want it at 280, it doesn't really matter what ink type I want to run. So we've got that coming out. We have a new matte black that came out. That one actually we launched in December.
I need some of that. So
that is really cool.
Yeah, we love matte black, and we have one we go to. It's our go-to for us right now, but and it's not Monarch's, so it's good to hear that you have something.
Do you run a matte black for everything?
Me, yes. Same black. We only have one black.
Yeah.
How about you? Am I doing it wrong?
No. I just wondered. And Aaron, me and you had this phone call not that long ago about blacks. That I get. I don't know. Right now, it's like a fad where I get so many people that want black on black printing, like black ink on a black shirt. And they want it to be shiny as possible. So we're doing literally like 2-pass black, flash, 2-pass black, and running it through the dryer. And they want it to be nice and shiny.
They want it to be shiny because it's just black on black.
Right. Because it shows up, rather than doing like a gloss over it or, something like that, like a high density or whatever. But other than that, we've always just used print black.
Normally you use print black?
Yeah.
Well, last year at ISS, we did something really cool on a black shirt. We actually did a standard black and a matte black on a black shirt.
Mm-hmm.
It was really cool. It was almost like you were printing with two different colors on a black shirt.
Does the matte black show up well on a black shirt? Because that's my problem is like if I get a matte black, am I defeating the purpose? Because the shirt is matte and then I'm putting shiny black on it. So it stands out.
Shiny black, you can see it. It's easy to see.
Right.
The matte black is you got to get a little closer to the
right. See, that's my problem is I don't want to get a matte black and then I get that customer who wants it to be a glossy black. I mean, not to say that like we print our regular black, it's not necessarily a glossy black, but like we've never had an issue with it. It's never been like, oh my God, the black is super shiny and all the other colors aren't. But I've never just gone the route of being like, I want to get a matte black. I would like it to look matte as much as possible, but I don't know. I've never had an issue with it. I've never had a customer say anything. We print black ink and it looks like black. So I don't know where to go with this conversation. It just seems like, I'm just saying, it seems like matte black sounds cool. Like I would like matte black, but like, I don't know if I necessarily need it.
Yeah, you do. You do need it, Dylan, because most people aren't printing. You're not usually printing black ink on a black shirt. I mean, yeah, we do that too. It happens. Like we get those special requests, but and I didn't even think to put gloss on it now because we do have gloss because we have a customer that really likes gloss, but it's never been. It's like this leopard print. But I would love to. I think that's probably the answer is just to put another layer, just a layer of gloss on top. Because if you put gloss on top of that black, it's going to be way shinier than just your standard
2 passes black.
So. Yeah. I think gloss is probably the answer for that.
Well, fuck, Aaron. Send me some matte black. Now I got to try it out.
That's where it's at, for sure, matte black. But I didn't even know you had this, so I need some too. So,
well, our conversation the other day was that now that I have the system, was even with the Wilflex system, what we had is we always had a bucket of international, like red and yellow, because we use red and yellow so much that it's like, there's no need to like mix a Pantone every time we need red or yellow. It's like, nope, that's straight up red. Like, and when we write our Pantone list for every job, like normally it's all the Pantone numbers. If there's red in the job that looks like straight up red, we always write bucket red. So that's what I was calling you for, was like, do you guys have just a straight up bucket red and a bucket yellow that I can
Yes.
use?
Oh, but you're asking him.
I'm asking him, not you. Yeah. And then he told me, he said, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So, and then we talked about matte black, and I told him that's confusing. And then I hung up the phone.
Well, and as weird as this sounds, one of the byproducts that came from creating this matte black is it came from the offset side of the house. And that's kind of the cool thing too about when you start making new products, is you're taking ingredients or things that don't necessarily make it into plastisol from plastisol manufacturers. Because if you think about it, how many other people are ink companies in the plastisol world? There aren't any.
Right.
They're all plastics manufacturers.
You guys just want world domination.
When it comes to ink, yes.
To paint.
No, so
Right.
one of the things we started using to make this matte black actually had some really cool effects when it came to ink. So if you add 1% to an ink, it gives it a suede, velvety, really super soft hand. You add 2% to it, it becomes matte. You add 3% plus, it actually starts to puff the ink up. So it's really depends on how much you want to add to it. Really depends on the effect you get.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that would be a really cool product to launch this year. Is kind of it does multiple things.
It's like an all-in-one. You don't have to buy a, puff. You don't have to buy suede. You don't have to buy like a doling agent or whatever. You just buy one, and it's just like an equation. What percentage do you put in to get the effect you want?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. All right. Is
Now
it $1 million or something? Because
it's one of the gold. You have to pay him in gold bars. That's why he has them all over his desk.
Yeah, I sold a lot of it right before this show. That's why I was glowing yellow.
Right. No, we kind of touched on this a little bit, and I want to talk about it because it's the main reason what sold me on Monarch, and it's the opacity thing. And we've ran into it a couple times, and I told you this when I switched. I was like, the biggest thing I'm scared of of switching ink manufacturers is the fact that I have two big ink walls with Pantone's already mixed of my current system. Like, am I going to have to toss them? And we decided, no, you don't have to toss them because we're using the same kind of curing inks, and it's just my new mixes are going to be better because they're Monarch. Well, they're going to be, in our opinion, better. And we've ran into it a couple times now. And I think I've called you and talked to you about one or two of them, where the first one was the blue. That was like the one that you sent me. But we had one not that long ago that was like an independent trading camo hoodie. Normally you don't have any bleeding issues or whatever. It just was camo. And we did white underbase with like a hunter orange on top. And we were using the Wolflex one. Well, this is one of those inks where it was just orange, and it was like, man, we're going to either have to like double the underbase to get the opacity so it's not so heathery looking, or we're going to have to double the orange or something just because it didn't look right. So I was like, no, hold on. Let's mix a Monarch of the same Pantone and just put that in the screen and see what it does. And as soon as we put that orange in the screen and printed it, again, one pass, it was exactly where we wanted to be. Like, there was no more, oh shit, we got to do something extra on the press, or we need to do something different. It was just straight up. And again, like, that keeps happening. We'll have jobs where we're doing a certain ink, and then all of a sudden we mix up a Monarch and we throw the Wolflex one in the garbage. It's just like, I mean, I don't want to talk shit about Wolflex. We've used Wolflex forever. It's just like at the shop with my hands making an ink, and I put it on press. These are the results I'm getting. So that to me was the whole reason. So why is it that your inks are more opaque than other ones? Is it because of the 3-roll thing, or what is it, I guess?
I think that's part of it. I think part of it is also corporate philosophy. We had this discussion with the president 5 years ago when we first came up with the Apocalypse series, and we're like, do we want to make it less expensive. And then, it just won't be as opaque. And his question was, why? Why would you want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, what is the right way to do it? And I go, well, the right way to do it is make it as opaque as humanly possible so that you only have to hit it one time. He goes, okay, then that's what we're going to do.
Right.
To him, it made no logical sense to make anything other than a massively opaque.
Does increasing the opacity of ink? So if you have a standard ink and it's single and then you double it and you get more opacity, and a triple pigment, let's say, is like maximum opacity. Does adding pigment to ink make it thicker?
No.
Really? I always
that was one of the things that we were talking about when we were talking about opacity. I was like, well, if it's more opaque, is it going to be a more rigid ink? Is it going to be harder or whatever? It's not. It has a really nice soft hand.
Not if it's your pigment. It sounds like it's not.
Right. I'm just saying that, like, I am doing one pass, on most of the top colors, and it's more opaque than it would be if I had to do 2 passes / 1 pass or whatever with the old ink. So I'm actually putting down less ink, and it's more opaque than I was having before. So the prints are softer now than they were before.
Well, and see, that was our goal when we launched the inks is, when we first started getting into the market, I'm like, I need something that's wearable. I want cool designs that feel good to wear. And if you've got to do a white underbase plus, 2 to 3 top coats, that's a lot of ink. I mean, you're basically wearing a heat shield.
Right.
Well, if I can get the highest amount of opacity with the thinnest amount of ink film, well, now it's a wearable garment, right? Where it actually feels good to wear. And when you have that little bit of ink on a shirt and you wash it, it feels really good after you wash it. I mean, it feels amazing. I mean, Dylan, you can speak to that one. I mean,
yeah. No, the prints feel great. Like I said, I have zero complaints with anything so far since we've been using it. And I had told you this when we were having our initial conversation, was with the Wolflex guys. I called somebody about it and they were like, oh, well, what you can do is just add like use 10% less base in your mix. So you're having a higher pigment load in the ink. And we tried that and it did help, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't where we needed to be. And it was kind of like a cheat. It was like, why do I have to do this? Why can't I just mix the color that it's supposed to be and then it's done? But that's pretty much what we had to do for the last year, is if we had an issue with the color, we just did 10% less base and a higher pigment load.
Yeah. So like, similar to before we came out, Union had its max opaque and then its ultra soft series, right? 2 different opacity levels, which gave you 2 different mixing systems. Well, I think one of the cool things that Monarch has managed to do is it doesn't matter the ink system. It's all the same opacity, right? So if you're using, it doesn't matter if you're using the Apocalypse blending system or the Vivid blending system, guess what? The recipes are exactly the same. I mean, you can go online, look at our mixing system, look at the formula for Vivid, look at the formula for Apocalypse, and they're exactly the same because they're the same opacity.
Well, that's what I said is nice now, is like I don't have to worry about it. I know that the shittiest looking ink looks great, so all the other ones should be fine. You know what I mean? We went with the bottom of the barrel of this one's going to look terrible, and it came out great. So I should not have issues with any of the other colors. So like I said, you didn't pay me to say any of this. We just fucking tried it and we liked it. And that's why we wanted to have you on here, is to talk about it, because people keep asking me over and over again about the ink when I post pictures of prints. So I just wanted to get your, nerdy take on the whole thing, because that's what sold me in the first place.
Oh, well, and I apologize due to COVID. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to come out and see either one of you two yet. But, that's something I pride myself in too, is that I see probably 300 to 400 printers a year. So I'm certainly not somebody who manages, launches, and develops product from behind a desk. Mm-hmm. No, I'm out in the field right with you guys. And if there's something that you guys say that I've noticed multiple printers say, hey, I wish we had an ink that did X, well, guess what we're going to create next.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything in the industry, I guess the ink industry, that you wish changed or hope it will change within the next couple of years? Or is it all pretty much the same?
I see things changing, whether it's for the good or not is, really speculative. I think a lot of it's marketing, especially when you start looking at the quote unquote non-PVC inks or water-based inks and how somehow those are more environmentally friendly when they're really not.
Do you guys have any desire to get into doing water-based?
I think we will once we see it turn into a sizable market, and we see more printers going down that direction. Right now, I think there's enough manufacturers in the industry to supply the need of what's currently out there. But once it becomes more than just, one shop in a city or two shops in a city that happen to do it, or another shop that just happens to be playing around with water-based, but truly their production's still plastisol, then I think we'll look into it more.
And that's pretty much us. Like, we do a good amount of water-based, but we do way more plastisol than we do water-based. So,
and I think from a Monarch's point of view is we haven't perfected this one yet.
Right.
I think we're getting close, but again, I want to be best in class no matter what we go into. So if we're in the plastisol market, I will be best in class. Monarch will absolutely be best in class. So you can try them all, and then just try us last. That's all I say, because you won't switch once you do us last. That doesn't come from a point of arrogance. It actually just comes from a point of just a corporate mantra. That's
what you guys want to strive for.
That's exactly what we're striving for. So, I think once we've done that in the plastisol market space, then I think we'll start looking at other market spaces. But for right now, I think we've got our hands full with the plastisol business.
Right.
Well, one of my favorite parts of this show is when we're talking to other shops, we ask them if they have a shop hack. So, so do you have any shop hacks for us that are maybe ink specific that that would help us out?
Shop hacks. Sure. I will say, I don't care whose ink you're using, stir it before you put it in the screen. All inks need to be stirred. The other one is, I think it actually started in 2008 and 2009 when everyone was, cutting corners to, save a buck, right? Well, if I can emulsify a screen with only one coat on one side or one on each side, well, that's good enough. As long as I can get the image down, hey, it works. Well, that's actually not a good practice when it comes to screen printing. Screen printing, you should, at least on your emulsion, you should be doing at least 2 on each side. Because you want a decent, if you can't feel the stencil on the print side of your screen, you're not putting enough emulsion down, or you're not using one that has high enough solids. Because the reality of it is always the technology or the art of screen printing is it's not how much ink I can smash through the screen to get on the shirt. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create an ink well on the bottom side of the screen, and I'm just basically trying to feather or lay that ink well down onto the shirt. So if I don't have a good stencil on the bottom side of the screen, there's no ink to put down on the shirt.
I'm with you on this 100%. However, I would recommend that somebody or that a shop would get a thickness gauge, and whether or not you buy it, I know they're expensive, so maybe you don't buy it, but you have somebody.
Nobody can borrow them because you haven't given Frank his back yet.
You can borrow one, which is true. You can borrow it from me. Well, no, I have to give it back to Frank, and then you can borrow it from Frank, or any of your emulsion reps when they come through, they usually travel with them, and so. Because if you're saying to coat it 2-2, well, what are you using? What kind of, are you manually coating them? Are you auto coating them? Are you using the sharp side or using the round side? And so I would recommend, I'm going to say you're right. I'm with you 100%. You've got to have a nice inkwell or gasket. Otherwise, like you said, you're just trying to smash some ink through there. And we just had this conversation on Friday because we're testing a new exposure unit, and it goes way back to my garage days. When I first started, I just coated one time and I did that because the thinner your emulsion is, the easier or the better or the more detailed you're going to get of an image. You know, you can, it's exponentially harder when you have thick emulsion to get a crisp edge. Especially if you're using like a terrible light source, or you don't have a CTS and you're using some, I started with vellum. It was called Casey's vellum. And so, you know, I didn't have the best stuff. And so I on purpose, like I deliberately had a thin emulsion so that I could get, you know, good detail, but then it screwed me on press, you know, and, but that was my only choice at first until I got a better light source. And so, but you're right. Emulsion thickness is incredibly important. And I think it's really overlooked in most shops.
It is. I think, so that is one that, you know, you can have the most opaque ink in the world, but if you don't have an inkwell, you'll never see it.
Yeah. In fact, that's part of how when I said that half of printing a really good white is printing it correctly. Well, one component of printing it correctly is the correct emulsion thickness. And we went for a crazy EOM. We went for a higher EOM than most people would print with because we wanted that to create a bigger well. But we didn't know how big we were creating until we actually got a gauge and we can measure it. You know, otherwise we were just guessing. You know, we thought it was more. We'll coat it a little bit thicker. But we didn't know exact, and so that's where the thickness gauge comes in. Highly recommend it. Call the F guy.
Oh, absolutely. The other thing I would highly recommend is a donut probe.
Oh yeah.
The underutilized donut probe. I mean, because there's really no way. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, the laser, you know, temperature gauges are okay to give you a rough guess of close to maybe what temperature it is, but it's never going to give you an idea of mapping your dryer. So, you know, do you have any cool spots? Is one side hotter than the other? I mean, most grass dryers left to right can differ 10 to 15 degrees. Okay, well, if my left side's 10 degrees colder than my right, okay, what temperature am I going to set it at? Because I want to make sure everything is curing properly.
That was one thing that was pretty cool about when we bought our new dryer this year, the new Sprint, is that it has a built-in donut probe. And I was
shipped
like,
with one.
Right. Like I didn't know it did that. And then when he got here, he's like, oh, let's set your temp. Like I wasn't expecting the tech to be like, let's set it for you. But it's cool. Like they have a plug-in right in the
like a USB.
Right, like right in the friggin' computer part, and you plug it in, super long wire on it, put the donut probe on, and then hit the graph, and it shows it going through the dryer, and it shows it like getting up to this temp, and then you're like, oh shit, it's too hot. Let's speed up the dryer, and then it goes back down to where you want it, and it's like it's perfect. It was awesome. It was like super dialed in. But yeah, I have a one in a box too, like we used to use on the old dryer, but it's pretty cool, pretty handy to have just to make sure you're getting it right.
Yeah, and I would say if you're going to buy a new dryer, get the longest heat tunnel you can possibly afford or possibly fit into your
I agree with that.
I think the way it starts is typically you start as a manual, so you get a dryer for a manual and you're just starting up, and then you get your first auto and hey, that dryer will work, so let's just try to make that one work for the time being. And then when you go to get a new one, I don't think you're thinking ahead of, you do realize now that you've gone into autos, your manual days are slowly going to be behind you. And what happens when you buy your next auto? You need something that's going to be able to handle that. And I think,
well, like you said too, it's like baking cake. Like it's better to have the longer dwell time than it is to just like have a short dryer and you have the heat cranked, so that you can keep up. Because a lot of times, to be honest, like the guy running the press is trying to dictate the belt speed if it's a smaller dryer, because he's like, fuck, this thing's not keeping up with me. Let me turn it up.
Yep.
Like, oh, I'll just turn the heat up a little bit and I'll turn the speed up. It's like, no, dude, like get a bigger dryer that can keep up with you, but also it's just like doing the exact dwell time it should have through the dryer. It's like us, like our dryer is literally wall to wall. Like it's not ideal, but we went with the biggest dryer we could get to fit in here. And there's like a 3-foot gap for somebody to walk by on one side and like just enough room on the other side for like the carts and the table for them to lay shirts out. And that's it.
When our first Sprint showed up, I thought I did something like horribly wrong. I'm like, this thing is such a beast. There's no way I had measured, right? Like it'll fit. But until it's there,
no, that's a huge thing. Like you can measure. I see people all the time getting stoked about getting their new equipment, and they put like blue tape on the ground. Like this is where it's going to go. And then not until you get it there and it's like installed and put together, you're like, this thing is massive. It was like us with our G3. Like we got that. I literally did measurements for days. I was like, oh, this is where this is going to go. This is where this is going to go. And then as soon as it got set up, I was like, I fucked up. Like, like it's cool and it works and everything's great. Like I have no issues with it. I'm just saying that like it's way bigger than I thought it was going to be as far as just like when you actually start moving around it and like trying to like plane your shop out, it's fucking huge.
When that Sprint showed up, I thought about like seriously considered taking off one segment of the infeed, and then I would have had to have ordered 2 new belts. It's a split belt, so I would have had to have ordered 2 new belts because they would have been too long then, you know?
Right.
So I really considered like, this is just too big. I have to cut off, I think the infeed's 8 feet. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I can't think right now. I was going to make it
Ours
4
is
feet.
2.
And I got this close to doing it, but
yeah,
I was talked out of it.
I honestly wish I could add 4 more feet to the outfeed, but I can't because it would literally be wall to wall. Like you couldn't walk around it. You'd have to run. You'd have to like Call of Duty style run and slide under the dryer to get to the other side.
You should just let it empty outside, like stick it out your wall.
It'd be like a cool down fan.
Yeah. Well, in the winter.
By the way, do you have those, by the way?
The cool down fans?
Yeah.
No, but we
Dylan, it's we were sworn to secrecy.
No, but actually I have no idea what I'm talking about.
There is not one coming out.
Obviously, that's a great, by the way, that's a great, work hack is I've actually gone into a few shops that actually they built 2x4s and they've basically created
put fans on top
and put fans on top, blowing, towards the end of the belt. Not obviously
Damn.
not in
M&R.
If only one was like a precise fan that was like a razor straight down and didn't blow into the dryer.
I'm saying M&R, don't sleep on this.
Yeah, get on it. It was our idea.
Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, I've looked into that because my problem is that I have, like I said, I have an 8-foot infeed and I have a 4-foot outfeed. So on the Sprint, the 4-foot outfeed, 4 feet of that is like their hood. Like they have that hood that rolls up and rolls down. Well, mine's literally, if it's down, it's at the end of the belt. Like it literally comes out right after the hood. The problem is like I said, we've had it before where if you're doing a good amount of ink or a good amount of place, we've had that tack onto itself and problems. Like if the person's not at the end of the belt catching, we've had issues. So I've always wanted to get some kind of fan built in there or something. So that's definitely something I would be looking into at some point.
Have you seen Dylan's on press fan that he built? So like we did one, you just take a box fan, put it in a frame, and then you can pull it in and out and lock down in your press. Well, we did that and it's okay. Like it works, right? But Dylan's is actually like, it is blue and he has a special name for it.
We've had that for years.
And everything.
No, I didn't spray paint it. It was already blue.
The fan was blue. It came blue.
The fan was blue. Yeah, it was perfect. It was a match made. It was perfectly. So we've done that for years. We always had this like shitty white, like, the whatever they are, like 2 feet by 2 feet box fan. Like you get them at Walmart for like $10 or whatever. Yeah. And we've always done that with like a 2331 frame. And then you can put the box fan right on the frame and literally just get like some 90s and screw it to the
zip
frame.
ties
so like
too.
So you can just slide it right in, turn it on. We always put it on like right after the flash because we always had 8 color presses before. So if you did like flash cool down, but you didn't have the cool down wasn't enough to like cool the ink down so that the very next head, it wouldn't stick to the back of the screen. So we always put this fan in. Well, I think the fan like took a shit or something. It was just a bad fan. It went bad. So I went to Walmart to buy another fan and they had like a display of like purple fans, blue fans, green fans. And the blue was like M&R blue. It was like perfect.
I always thought that you
blue
painted
fan.
That. I had no idea.
It was a blue fan. I think it was like $8. And then as soon as we got it here, I was like, dude, this is perfect. Like I found the M&R logo online. And we found the font that they use for like all their naming in the presses, like Sportsman, whatever. So I put the M&R logo, and then I put "Cool That Shit Down, Fan." Like it was they called it that. It was branded, everything. Put logos on both sides, put it on press. And I actually took a picture of it that day and sent it to Rich, and he loved it. He thought it was amazing.
Well, I once made some special ink. There's a guy, there used to be a guy here that he would buy ranch, like from Costco.
That's my favorite video of yours, by the way.
I've seen that video. That is an awesome video.
The best part is like that it fucking like has air behind it when you put it in the thing, and it just like it splurted out on the screen.
Yeah, we like copied the Union Ink exact logo and just called it ranch additive. And so if you ever need to add ranch to your ink, well, we've got it.
I miss those videos. We don't get as many of those videos from you anymore.
I saved that label, like that whole thing. I saved it for like forever. It's so.
You need to have that on the shelf. Yeah. So do you have any questions for us, Aaron?
Yeah. I mean, do you are you like me? Do you buy high, sell low?
Oh, Andy, he got you there.
I mean, that's some good advice, right? My first stock I ever bought in my life, I did because I had to for a class, and I lost money. I bought the bare minimum, whatever it was you had to buy. And so I bought it, and then I lost almost all of it. So I never forgot that. I'm like, man, that wasn't very fun. So yeah, don't buy high, sell low, right?
Oh, how are you guys? I guess the other one is, how are you guys currently managing the blank shortage?
We're not. We're just fucking surviving. Actually, I've noticed since we've been back, it's been way better.
I think it's slightly improved. I mean, still there's giant holes, right?
Before the first, I was almost on every single order having to find like something to substitute something else. And since we've been back, since the 4th, it's not as often. I feel like they're definitely trying to catch up. And then we talked to SNS about it. We had them on, and they were saying that it was going to get better, but hopefully by the end of first quarter, we should be somewhat back to normal. So
yeah, we found some black hoodies, large and extra large, and so we bought them up, and we still have some stock of them we pull from for orders because that's just a really popular color here. But yeah, we were told that it's supposed to get a lot better here in the next few weeks, and so I'm crossing my fingers and hope they do. I remember when we had it wasn't a whole, all blanks were experiencing supply shortages. It was just like safety green. This is going back 7 or 8 years ago. That safety green was like the color to have for everyone. And so I actually went to try and get safetygreen.com, and I was gonna have just a website that just sold safety green shirts. I mean, it really would have been like
the best part is you would have bought safetygreen.com, and then all of the construction companies that come to us and never ever ask for safety green, they're like, can I get that safety yellow? They would have went to safetyyellow.com and not gone to your website.
So yeah, you're right. I should have bought safety yellow.
You need safety yellow and safety green.
It would have been a terrible investment. I would have bought high, sold low.
See, you would have bought safetygreen.com, and I would have bought safety yellow, and I would have gotten all of all the money.
Yeah.
Well, hey, so another question I had is, and I guess this is more like a general question for screen printing in general.
Yes, I am more handsome than Andy.
But there you go.
Well, okay. Obviously.
I didn't mean to cut off your question, but
no, it's like, how do you guys manage color? So, and I guess here's where I'm at with that is my concern with most of the screen printing industry is the industry as a whole is so new to the actual color gamut and what color is that if I use the word like metamerism, no one knows what I'm talking about, right? Well, when you start talking about color and getting a light box, right? So metamerism is the color shifting.
It's like when I eat something and it burns it really fast, right? So I don't gain a bunch of weight.
No, that's metabolism. Very similar. Very similar.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Yeah. So it's when the color shifts when you use a different light source. Right. So
we've had this conversation. We talked about that. We both have talked about getting like a Pantone Lightbox kind of thing.
So a Pantone Lightbox typically has 5 different light sources. And you're trying to see, okay, I'm trying to create a PMS color that shifts the least under those 5 different light sources.
Mm-hmm.
Is the screen printing industry really needing to get that in detailed when it comes to PMS colors? And if not, that the answer would be if so, but it's okay. But then what light source would you use if you're getting a light box? Do you just use the outdoor, because most people are going to view your shorts outdoors, or do you go indoors? How do you guys, if you're going to check your PMS color, how would you do it?
We literally just had this conversation at Steaks the other night because we were talking about things to add to the shop now that we got more space and all this other stuff. And I was saying how TC was going to make, us a light box, right? Did he send you yours yet, Andy?
I haven't gotten it.
I don't know what the hell.
Did you get yours?
I don't know what's taking him so long. But anyway, we were talking about it and I told them, I was like, oh, what's really cool? And my guys didn't know. I was like, what's really cool is they make this light box where you could actually like slide the shirt in, slide a Pantone in, and you can check it to make sure it's correct and what it needs to be and everything. And then we got talking about it, and realistically in a real scenario in a shop, if we're getting artists that give us Pantones like from the book and they're like, this is what I want to use, whatever, like that's fine. And we mix every color. We're not mixing anything by eye. We're mixing everything to Pantones for every job, no matter what. Like we're picking them off, in the art department, they're picking Pantones for every job. So that way, when we print it again, we're using the exact same Pantones. We're matching colors across the board. Everything's the same. But the problem is I was like, the only way I would really think that we would actually use that for every job is if we were doing nothing but like large corporate, like I was talking about in the beginning, like if we were doing like stuff where this job is like a $90,000 job for like the NFL or something. And I was like, I need to make sure this color is exactly what it should be, because I'm not going to eat that job. Like I'm not going to get them complaining about the color in any way. But like the day to day, we generally say in our terms and conditions with any customer is if you don't supply Pantones, we will match them for you to the best of our abilities with our monitors. Like, we don't have like perfectly calibrated monitors. We all have nice monitors, but we're trying to get it as close as possible.
Well, neither does the artist generally. I mean,
right. But that's what I mean is like, we're just doing the best of our abilities to match unless you provide us with a Pantone from a book. Like don't give us a Pantone from Photoshop or something you Googled. Like if you're giving us a Pantone from a book, we're going to mix that Pantone. We're going to print that job to that Pantone. But as far as making sure it's like, super, super perfect with like checking it in like a perfect environment light source, we're not doing that. We've almost never had a complaint or an issue about a Pantone unless it's a customer that's just like super left field, like doesn't know what they're talking about. And we have to like talk them through the whole thing. Like I've made fun of this on this podcast before about how you mix a color from their artwork to a customer and he gets it and they're pissed. And they're like, this doesn't match the color of my truck. And it's like, I don't know what color your truck is. Like if you had green on your logo, we made it the green that it looks like on the computer, but we had no idea that you were trying to match your Dodge Ram. Like I have no idea. So that's more of a communication issue with a customer of being like, if you wanted it to match your truck, tell us you want it to match your truck and we'll try to figure out what that color is. But other than that, we don't really run into any issues.
Why do you ask that? Are you curious as to what level of consistency we're trying to hit colors by, or how important it is, I guess, it is to hit certain colors? Is that why you asked that?
Well, yeah, because I just need to know. I'm just trying to get a general idea on, I don't want to overwhelm the industry with color correctness.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Especially if the industry is never going to get there.
Right.
I think I'm close to the same as Dylan, that I would, if I had to guess, I'd say 90% of our work is not Pantone match. We're not matching any PMS colors. Okay. But we are trying to match certain colors. Like Dylan just said, hey, I want it the color of my Dodge Ram or something like that. We do that. We charge for that. But then most of our jobs, it's just red. You know what I mean? And we send they don't care. They're like, hey, could you please make my art red and then some yellow or whatever. And then we send them over a proof, and we do the same thing. It's like, hey, we're simulating this. This is like a digital proof. It's not a real proof, obviously. I mean, what's funny is 90% of the people that are going to be looking at this proof are probably looking at it on their phone, and so it's small and they're going to miss details. It happens all the time. It's small. They miss details. The color's off, or it's not the same as their monitor or whatever. And so here we are spending all this time trying to get it right over, with the right ink colors, and they're just looking at it on their phone, doing a proof on their phone. I don't think I don't think it would be worth it. And so we only run into a situation. It's pretty rare, I should say, that we run into an order where we print it and they're upset with the result, with the outcome.
Yeah.
Where they're like, oh, this wasn't really the color I wanted. Most people are pretty happy most of the time, and we do our best to get there. I don't think there's like this perfect world of, oh, our proof is right. And like, who really has a Pantone book? I mean, they're expensive, and so.
But that's what I'm saying. My specific niche market is, a lot of them is like artists who are doing nothing but like, artwork for all these bigger clients all the time. And they're professional enough to have a book, and they see it and want to make sure it's what their vision was. So that's why I make sure that we Pantone every job and we check it with them and everything else. But like I said, the only reason why I would go to the extreme, anything further than that, is if I was trying to save my own ass with a massive order, just so I didn't run into that issue. Because if they came to me and were like, this color isn't right, I could be like, well, we did the Pantone you asked for, and I checked it in our like certified Lightbox thing.
Yeah. Yeah, but here's the thing. Still, if they're not happy, we're reprinting it.
Right,
so
exactly. And that's what sucks. And we could talk about this all day long. We could talk about the perfect white ink we're using, the perfect this and this, but realistically, we're all fucking softies. And when the customer says, I don't like this, whatever. And I get that all the time from the people, like my employees here. They're like a salesperson. They'll be like, I did everything correct. This guy is just being a dick.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I'm always like, well, let's just redo. We have to redo it. Like, no matter who is wrong here, we're redoing it.
Just last week, I had a customer. It wasn't a color thing, but we had somebody order shirts, and they had sent like an Excel sheet of what their shirts were, and then they sent an updated Excel sheet, right? And so we took the updated one, printed the shirts, picked up the order. Day later, calls and says, "Hey, I'm missing 2 shirts." And we're like, oh, well, it's, we matched it up to that second Excel sheet you sent. And it's like, oh yeah, well, there was one I thought you were looking at the first one too. There was just a communication thing there. Right. And so obviously we just go off of the second sheet. When we would never look at
you looked at the updated version. Why would you do that?
Right.
Idiot.
But the thing is like, it didn't matter. Because why? Because we're just going to make him happy. It was like, no big deal. We looked at the second one, ordered, I think it was a hoodie and a shirt or whatever it was, and then reprinted it. Because why? Because you just want them to be happy. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think in the end, they knew that, oh crap, like I wasn't even invoiced for these things either. And we just gave them to them because that's the kind of company I think you want to be. If you want to be successful, just take care of the customer.
And it sucks to say that though. It sucks to be like, no matter what, we're going to make it right, because I feel like it's taking advantage of our ethics and like what we stand for. Because there are people that just do that. They just bitch about something to get free stuff. They're like, well, if I put up a big enough stink about this, they're going to give me what I want, even though I didn't earn it, or it's not my right to have this redone. Like, they should just own up to it. But it's like I said, it's just one of those things. Like, we don't want that tarnish on our company to be like, well, they weren't happy with what we gave them. So I don't know.
Dylan, you wouldn't be splitting the difference, would you be?
He's got all the zingers. Hey, I'm not far enough in that book yet to make that distinction. So
yeah, and also I think that with that book, it almost takes a second read and also a lot of practice. It's not just a story that you're reading or listening to. It's one of those books where you're trying to take away something. and then apply it, like actually apply it to your life. That's going to take some practice,
Dude, there's things that like he said where he's like, next time you do this, try doing this. And I'm like, oh yeah. Like as soon as he says it, it's just me though. Like I forget instantly. Like right now I have no idea. All those things he said to apply in life. I'm like, I don't remember what he said. Like I'm going to have to refer to my phone or that cheat sheet every time I'm going to have talk to anybody now to remember
until you practice it enough. So,
yeah.
Well, I think a lot of those books, it's if you start looking at them like line item, I'm like, oh my God, I got to do this, and this. It's a little bit overwhelming. So typically when I read those books, I'm just trying to pick out a gem or two that's really how I feel too. Hit home that, okay, I can actually put this into practice because it's not overwhelming and it's something I really want to do.
Well, we're talking about book club now, but like pretty much with this book too, there's things in there that I just didn't realize. Like the whole thing with like, I'm definitely the guy who is like, try to get them to say yes. And if they say no, I'm discouraged. And like, I take a step back and I feel like a piece of shit. And then in this, he was like, no, like you want them to say no that like first so that you can get to the real, finding out how to get them to say yes or why.
Yeah. And by saying no, they're in control. So like they have power, and that's what I think a really important point. I didn't realize that one either. That's a good one. So we have some quick takes. You ready for this?
Absolutely.
You want to go first, Dylan?
Yeah. Let me pull up your text.
Unless
get past all the nudies you sent me earlier today before I can get to it.
Yeah. Well, that might take a while. So maybe I should go first.
Yeah. All right. You go first.
Okay. What's in queue on Netflix?
Netflix.
Netflix.
Wow.
Yeah. You don't have
That's
that?
a different website.
It's a different.
Netflix.com and Netflix.com are two different websites.
Yeah. So there's two answers we're looking for. What do you have in queue on Netflix? And then the other one.
Yeah. The other one, my wife probably would not appreciate me, going there. What is my next thing on Netflix?
I'm going to go. Is there really a Netflix? I got to find out right now. Hold on.
I said Netflix.
I don't know. So I will say through lovely COVID in the last 9 months, I would say we've almost watched everything on Netflix.
Seriously.
I mean, I think I've gone through every single war documentary there is. I'm kind of a sci-fi guy. So
me too.
There's one on not Netflix, but on Amazon Prime. Now I got to remember the name of it. Hold on, I don't remember.
Expanse.
Oh, The Expanse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen that, Dylan?
Yeah, I'm a little bit into it now. I've had it in my queue for a long time, and I'm where you're at, where I'm kind of like exhausted resources, and I'm like, all right, I'll go back and watch this now. But like, I've been in a deep hole watching West Wing for like months now. And I'm like on season 6. There's only 7 seasons, but it's one of those things where it was like when you watch like X-Files, where it's like season 1 has like 24 episodes and they're all an hour long. And it's like, it's going to take forever to get through this whole thing. That's where I'm at now with like West Wing. It's I probably got like another month left and I'll be done with that. But I love that show. I'm like the least political person there is too. Like I'm that guy where we don't talk about politics in my house. We don't talk about religion in my house. And I'm like, oh, let's watch West Wing. And now I'm like so deep into West Wing that it's like, I don't know. It's just weird that I ended up watching it.
So last night we turn on Netflix and I'm thinking, well, let's find something. And so normally that takes a minute, like you're going through, what are we going to watch? First thing that pops up, Night Stalker.
Yeah.
Hit play and then watched it to the end. Like, I think there's only 4, maybe 5 episodes, but we binged the whole thing. Have you seen it?
I saw the ad, same thing. As soon as I turned it on, it was like the first thing that came on.
Yeah.
There was one last night that I saved that came on first. I don't remember what it was.
That's how Netflix gets you, like now anyway. Like you turn it on, it immediately starts playing. Like I hit nothing and they were playing the preview for Night Stalker. And I'm like, well, that looks good. Go.
This looks like something I would be into.
Yeah. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Andy.
I was just going to say, but after we watched it, we were a little freaked out. So we were like, we had to get something normal in our lives. So,
Was the show that you said that your wife watched, was it Bridgerton?
Oh, mine?
Yeah.
She wants to watch that one. The only thing she said so far is she likes the concept. She wants to watch it. She's just afraid that there may be a little bit too much adult rated material in it for her.
Well, I can spoil it for you. I had no desire to watch that show, and apparently my wife was watching it, and I started like just being in the same room with her when she was watching it in the second half of the season. And apparently the second half of the season is where none of that takes place. So see, I'm the opposite. I wanted the first half. I wanted to be like, oh, this show's worth it to me now. But I got apparently this shitty second half where all the love is gone and they just hate each other. So if you just warn her, the first half is where it's at, and the second half is, you can just skip it.
Well, I don't know if either one of you have gotten to where I'm at. I've literally gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm sure I can find some of the shows that I grew up on. Those would be awesome to watch, right? So
that's what I'm doing. I'm watching old shows right now.
$6 Million Man, right? That
oh my God, yeah. Right? Steve Austin?
Yeah. So my wife and I are watching it the other night, and I think I couldn't make it through the first episode. It was so boring.
Well, like the CGI, like now, when he jumps bionically or whatever over a wall, and it's like, ching, 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 and you're like, no, that looks so fake. It's too, like there's no way.
Yeah, I grew up on shows that like I kind of want to go back and watch now that didn't have any of that stuff in it. They didn't have like weird special effects, because again, that ruins things for me when I go back and watch old movies that have terrible special effects. But I want to go back and watch shit like, I want to watch MASH from the beginning. Like I want to watch that. Or my favorite show as a kid was like, why
you said that last week. Right now?
I know, but like Quantum Leap. Like I want to go back and watch that. And I recently bought the box set too, so I want to go back and watch that. But it's just so funny. All these kids nowadays are watching like Netflix, like new stuff like You, and I'm like, yeah, well, I watched MASH, and it's like, okay, cool. Oh, I got the next quick take, don't I?
Yeah, you got the next one.
I gotta scroll through all these again. Wait, where did you pull Netflix queue out? That's not in here.
You're maybe looking at the wrong quick takes. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4. Make up one then if you can't find
favorite beverage. What are you drinking right now?
Is
that moonshine?
That is.
Did you make that?
He's going hard on the show.
I have really embraced, since we moved to North Carolina, I've really embraced the culture. So,
So you're just moonshining it.
I love it, man. It's apple pie moonshine. And it's
sounds amazing.
Old Smoky Moonshine is actually out of Tennessee. Out of
Andy, what were you drinking? I saw you had a big blue can. Was it Bud Light?
I told Joanne I had to on Friday while we were at work. I'm like, I need some beer, and she was like, I got to run to Walgreens or whatever. I'm like, grab me some beer, and then she comes back with this.
It is Bud Light. I knew it.
That's all I guess she said like, hey, this was all they had cold. I'm like, okay.
Dude, we were last year at Long Beach. We shared a house with Relentless, and I love those guys. And the entire time they were talking about Bud Light. Like they were just drinking Bud Light the entire time. And they kept saying like, oh, we got to get some BLs. We got to get some BLs. And it was just like, that's all I heard for a week was BL. And I was like, I don't drink. So to me, it was just like, I have nothing to do with this.
Well, this is St. Louis. So BL is a pretty big thing here. All right. Next quick take. Your go-to Chick-fil-A dipping sauce. If you only had to choose, like if you go through the drive-through, you got one choice. You can't just mix it up and get 5.
And then you die at the end of the drive-through, so you can't ever get any ever again.
But yeah. So this is your last meal, apparently. which is at Chick-fil-A, which isn't bad. I suppose that's pretty good, right? Your last meal. I mean,
I think you gotta go Chick-fil-A sauce.
The actual Chick-fil-A sauce?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good choice.
I was waiting for him to say Arby's sauce from his glove box.
Ketchup. But yeah, that Chick-fil-A sauce, I saw a recipe online, like people try to copy it to make it. And I looked at it and the ingredients, I was like, there's no way that's the right recipe. But
you know what's funny about me is I don't put sauce on anything. I don't ever get sauce at any restaurant or fast food.
Dude, that's just not American.
If I get like McDonald's chicken nuggets or Chick-fil-A chicken, I just eat it just chicken. Like I don't ever dip it in anything. It's just like straight. Like I like the flavor of the breaded chicken. I won't dip it in anything.
And what do you put your French fries in?
Salted French fries. I don't dip it in anything.
Yeah, like okay.
So don't ask me that question because it would be nothing.
Well, that's a good. I mean, that is an answer.
Dry ass chicken.
Exercising your right to choose nothing.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
So if you had a superpower, what would it be?
So if I had a superpower, what would it be? The ability to generate money.
I don't think that's a superpower. I think you could just work at the treasury to do that.
That should be a superpower. Yeah.
Just think about it, and there's $1 million. That'd be perfect.
Yeah, it's like when everybody used to ask me, like, "Hey, if you had 3 wishes, what would they be?" I'd be like, "1, my first wish is for 1 million more wishes."
You can't do that.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Genie would smack you for that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good superpower. I like it. What is for dinner?
Whatever my wife's making.
Can you smell it? Are you home?
It better be barbecue.
No, we actually had that last night. We had barbecue last night. No, I think they actually all went out for some burritos. So
all right, hold on. I got a question for both of you. Chipotle or Moe's?
Chipotle.
Chipotle.
Yeah, Moe's is dog shit. I'll say that on here. I don't care who fucking argues with me. Moe's is garbage.
It's yeah. Chipotle by far.
All right, cool.
By far.
We're all on the same page at least.
What about Qdoba?
I don't know what that is. You just made that up.
People eat there?
Yeah, it's Qdoba is another like Chipotle thing.
I don't know.
But it's not as good. Not as good.
Mm-mm.
All right, Dylan, what's for dinner?
I don't know. There's probably nothing. I'm probably going to have leftover cold Chick-fil-A sandwiches from New Jersey
In your mailbox.
that I got yesterday in my mailbox. No, well, we went to IKEA yesterday, and on the way to IKEA was a Chick-fil-A, so I bought a bunch of sandwiches, and they're in my fridge. So I'm probably just going to be a piece of shit and go home and eat a cold Chick-fil-A sandwich.
By the way, when you were
sauce on it, it probably lasts
No sauce.
forever.
That's true. That's true. Sauce would save it. By the way, when you were at not Chick-fil-A, when you were at IKEA, did you eat something? Did you go to the food court?
No, I didn't want to. Normally I would get the meatballs because it's like a thing you do when you go to IKEA. But because of COVID, it was weird. I didn't want to do it. So we actually brought a cooler with like lunch meat and stuff. So we like ate turkey sandwiches in the van in the parking garage.
That's weirder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since you went to IKEA, quick question. Does IKEA give you high anxiety?
A little bit. The problem I had was that I went in mind knowing that I have a new space and like new renovation. And I was like, oh, I could get like stuff like shelving units and like I wanted stuff for my office and like all this other stuff. I had like in my mind like what I wanted. And then when I got there and was going through their like rooms that are all set up, it was overload. It was like, I kind of like this, but I like this one better. And then I would get to the next room and I'd be like, shit, well, this one has this quality. And then like by the time I got done with everything, I ended up with like a chair, which I kind of like, a couch for my office, and then like random stuff. I don't even know why I bought it. So I feel like I had some good stuff, but like I really should have planned that out better. I should have went online and like pre-picked everything I wanted and then just went and got it.
Why do you ask? Does it give you anxiety?
Oh, absolutely. And my wife and I refuse to go there because it's like mice stuck in a mouse maze. I mean, you just can't get out, right? So
you're saying like how they make you flow through it? Like you don't necessarily know how to leave and there's no windows kind of thing.
Yeah. And everything is, and typically there's so many people there that you just feel like you're a mouse and stuck in a, mouse trap, mouse
I won't buy anything from there that's like their cheap particle board. Like it has to be real wood or just metal. So like I already know going in that 90% of the stuff there I won't buy. So I just go in and I'm like, all right, I know I could put this together with 3 pieces instead of like a dresser that's like 900 pieces and like 1,000 screws. And then it just falls apart anyway. So I just bought like stuff that's, you know, like a shelving unit that's metal and it's all together already. All I gotta do is mount it to the wall. Or I bought a chair that was literally like 2 pieces and I just bolted them together. Just stuff like that. That's all I'm really into. They have a lot of cool like kitchen organizing things. So I bought a bunch of that stuff for like the break room. But other than that,
I do not know what's for dinner, but I sure hope it's tacos. For some reason, when you said burritos, my brain went to tacos and it sounded.
Well, knowing you, it's going to be chili that you're just going to put in a tortilla.
Not chili tonight. But I really do appreciate you coming on. We had there's so much to learn about ink. I mean, we use it every day, and we just sometimes open a bucket and put it in the screen and print it and try and figure it out. And I'm still learning. Like I'm still learning. You know, I'm still learning about ink, and I appreciate you coming on because I feel like I learned something. I'm learned better.
I'm better learned. Well, me and Andy had this conversation yesterday. We called each other to talk about this podcast or whatever. And it's one of those things with inks. I feel like with a lot of shops that are growing, they just don't look at the science behind it, or they don't look at the reasons why they should use a certain ink. They just look at like, oh, this shop's using that white. I want to use that white, or this shop's using this. I want to use that. And they never really take the time to like figure out what works best for your shop and why.
Well, it's hard. I mean, you're busy. You're doing 1,000
I know,
things,
but I'm saying something like this, talking to Aaron was like huge. Like, I feel like if you really want to deep dive into why you should get something or what you should look into with any ink, it's going to be a big resource.
Well, and the other thing to remember is mine or anybody else's, not all inks print the same. So, it's also good to reach out to the manufacturer and find out what's the best way to print their particular ink. But the other thing is to remember too is ink doesn't have a brain. So if it worked and worked and worked and worked and worked, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work, guess what? It wasn't the ink. So you might want to look at what you did differently on that job or during that process that made that particular job fail. Mm-hmm. Because, ink can't decide to not work one day.
Right. And if you want to print a really, really good ink, you should probably print it through a screen from Frank. Just going to say that before we get off here.
That's true.
While drinking Pure Leaf.
Right.
Uh-huh.
As much as it pains me, I'm still drinking it. I just can't give it up. I can't give it up.
One day, Dylan. One day it'll happen.
I know. I hope. I'm still going to drink it because I still like it. It wasn't a marketing thing. It saddens me that they won't look at me. But hey, Pure Leaf. I'm pretty sure this one's like 5 days old though, and it was sitting on my desk, but still good. All right, Aaron. Well, thanks for coming on and doing this with us, man. We really appreciate it.
Well, hey, guys, I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. And if you guys ever have any questions, you know where to reach me. So feel free to call me anytime.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. We'll see you.
Take care. Dylan, you going to hold that phase?
Freeze. I love that. He knows your tricks. He knows your tricks.
I know. He knew a lot of stuff.
He did.